Did you know that European missionaries intentionally destroyed African languages as a tool of colonial control? For centuries, the narrative of Africa has been shaped by outsiders, often erasing the continent's rich history and sophisticated achievements. We're here to uncover the truth and expose the myths. Before the arrival of Europeans, Africa was home to powerful and prosperous kingdoms. The Empire of Songhai, flourishing from the 15th to the 16th centuries, governed hundreds of thousands of people. They excelled in medicine, mathematics, and astronomy, producing exquisite bronze, ivory, gold, and terracotta goods. The kingdoms of Mali, Benin, and Congo were complex monarchies with thriving city-states and extensive trade networks. West Africans traded gold, ivory, and spices with North African merchants long before European contact. The Portuguese were among the first Europeans to arrive on the West African coast in the 15th century, initially engaging in small-scale trade and kidnappings. However, the transatlantic slave trade didn't explode until the 17th century, fueled by the demand for labor on European sugar plantations. Colonial powers employed a range of tactics to erase African history and culture. Missionaries banned African languages in schools, replacing them with European languages like English, French, and Portuguese. They dismissed oral traditions as unreliable and destroyed sacred sites, dismantling altars and banning divination tools. The Arab-African slave trade, which spanned from the 9th to the late 19th century, also played a role in the exploitation and subjugation of African peoples. Arabs allied with Islamized Swahili city-states along the Red Sea coast to enslave Africans. The 20th century brought a new wave of challenges, including devastating wars and political instability. The Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Biafran War, raged from 1967 to 1970. Colonel Emeka Ojukwu led the secession of the Igbo-dominated southeast region as the Republic of Biafra. Britain supported the Nigerian government, imposing a blockade that led to the starvation of an estimated 2 million civilians. The Somali Civil War, which began in 1991, plunged the country into chaos and fragmentation. The ousting of President Mohamed Sayed Barre led to a power vacuum and widespread violence, resulting in the deaths of approximately 1 million people. The period from the 1950s to the 1960s saw a wave of independence movements across Africa. Countries like Nigeria gained independence from colonial powers, fueled by the nationalism of African soldiers who had fought in World War II. While some transitions were peaceful, others were marked by violence, as seen in Algeria and Kenya. European missionaries intentionally severed bridges to history by banning thousands of African languages in colonial schools. They replaced African names for gods, kings, and cities with European terms, and dismissed oral histories as mere folklore. In the 19th century, colonial scholars fabricated scientific evidence to support the idea that Africa had no significant past. They downplayed the achievements of civilizations like Aksum and ignored the collapses of Nubian kingdoms. West Africans had been exporting fine goods to Europe via North Africa for centuries before the arrival of the Portuguese in the 15th century. Early European contacts involved small-scale kidnappings, not the mass enslavement that would come with the sugar boom of the 17th century. During the wars of the late 17th century, a prophet named King Povita emerged as a symbol of African spiritual resistance. This overlooked figure highlights the ways in which Africans fought back against colonial domination. Two waves of Jewish migration to Africa, following destruction of the Babylonian temple and then by the Romans, led to integration into Ethiopian and Nubian societies. The 19th century gold rush and the discovery of diamonds in Kimberley, South Africa, led to the exploitation of black migrant labor by figures like Cecil Rhodes. The pre-colonial kingdoms of Africa were centers of knowledge, excelling in mathematics, astronomy, and art. However, colonial powers created a false narrative of a primitive Africa through biased textbooks, archaeology, and missionary campaigns, justifying imperialism and enslavement. The 20th century wars and conflicts caused immense suffering and disrupted socio-economic systems, leading to long-term health and education crises. The Somali War fragmented the state into clan fiefdoms. World War II militarized Africans and sparked independence movements, but also led to ethnic civil wars. The conflict caused intense physical and psychological trauma, hindering development and obscuring Africa's role as a center of world knowledge. The Somali civil war's fragmentation persists today, with the rise of al-Shabaab, piracy, and recurring famine. Nigeria's Biafra scars full separatist movements. The exploitation of resources like cobalt in the DRC and platinum in South Africa continues to rely on migrant black labor amidst inequality. Pushback against erasure is happening through media like Zainab Badawi's An African History of Africa and online resources. This informs Pan-Africanism and influences African Union policies on reparations. The independence movement of the 1960s birthed 54 nations, but ethnic tensions continue to drive conflicts. Colonial powers orchestrated a historical deletion by suppressing evidence of advanced societies to legitimize their civilizing mission. The Arab-African slave trade is often downplayed in Western curricula. Britain's support for Nigeria's blockade during the Biafran War, motivated by oil interests, is a controversial topic. The destruction of sacred groves and altars is now being recognized as cultural annihilation. Colonizers labeled African memory systems as unreliable, erasing prophets like King Povita and kingdoms like Ajuran. However, modern DNA and archaeological studies are vindicating oral histories and challenging Eurocentric timelines. What can we do to ensure that the true history of Africa is told? What would the world look like if the contributions of African people had never been erased?